Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, the end of the answer was different from the beginning of the answer. What on earth is the point of us having a lawyer rather than a leader as the Prime Minister if he can't even get the law right on a matter of...
A single parliamentary session has sent shockwaves across Britain's political establishment. In less than 15 minutes, one member of Parliament managed to expose the cracks within the government and leave the Prime Minister visibly shaken. There was no shouting, no chaos, just calm precision and solid evidence. Inside the House of Commons, Kemi Badenoch stood with a single purpose: to reveal what she described as a serious cover-up linked to national security and a failed espionage case. What unfolded was not merely a heated exchange, it was a methodical dismantling of authority, delivered with composure and facts. The issue at the center of this confrontation revolved around a spy case involving two individuals accused of working for China by infiltrating British political circles. The evidence, according to MI5, had been credible and the charges well-founded. Yet, without warning, the prosecution suddenly collapsed. The government's explanation was vague, inconsistent, and left more questions than answers. Badenoch arrived prepared, armed with documents, an exact timeline, and direct government statements that could not easily be dismissed. What happened next quickly became one of the most remarkable moments in recent parliamentary history. Before diving into the confrontation, the session began on a solemn note. The House observed a moment of silence for Sir David Amess, the MP tragically murdered in 2021. The gesture reminded everyone of the real-life dangers that public servants face, and why national security cannot be taken lightly. Against that backdrop, Badenoch's interrogation carried even more weight. Her first question was direct and firm. Why did the spy case collapse, and how could the government have failed to provide prosecutors with the evidence they required? The Prime Minister attempted to distance himself from responsibility. He claimed that the evidence had been submitted back in 2023 under the previous government, and implied that the issue was not his administration's concern. Badenoch, however, refused to accept that answer. She pointed out that in 2021, the UK government's own integrated review officially labelled China as the greatest state-based threat to Britain's economic security. That was not a partisan statement, it was official policy. She then reminded the House that in 2022, the Director General of MI5 publicly confirmed China's threat status on record. Given that both the intelligence agencies and the government itself had acknowledged China's threat years earlier, Badenoch asked the critical question: how did a case with such serious implications and strong evidence simply fall apart? The Prime Minister tried to navigate out of the confrontation by claiming that the previous government had deliberately avoided using the word enemy when describing China. He even quoted a former foreign secretary who had argued that labeling China as a threat was impractical and unwise. Badenoch did not flinch. She immediately countered with a statement from the current leader of the opposition, who in September 2023 said Britain should not describe China as a foe. Then she reminded Parliament that the Prime Minister himself had once admitted, "I have shied away from calling China a threat." That line shifted the entire tone of the chamber. Her argument was simple yet devastating. Both major parties had softened their stance on China, and that collective hesitation may have allowed a crucial national security case to collapse. At this point, the Prime Minister attempted to defend himself by accusing Badenoch of taking his words out of context. He claimed that in full his remarks had indeed described China as a threat. Badenoch's response was cutting. She pointed out that the espionage charges were brought under a Conservative government, but were dropped under the current Labour administration. "You still have not answered the question," she stated firmly. The silence that followed was deafening. Then came the turning point. Badenoch referred to an explosive report published by the Sunday Times, which claimed that Jonathan Powell, the Prime Minister's national security advisor, had convened a secret meeting to discuss the China spy trial. She looked directly at the Prime Minister and asked whether the meeting took place, or whether the report was false. The entire chamber fell silent. After a long pause, the Prime Minister admitted there had indeed been a meeting in September, but insisted it did not involve discussing the trial's evidence. Badenoch pressed further. Who attended this meeting? And why did the Security Minister claim that only the Deputy National Security Advisor had full autonomy over the decision? The Prime Minister maintained that no ministers or advisors were involved, only the Deputy, who had complete authority. Badenoch's response was sharp and skeptical. "Is the government seriously suggesting that one man alone made this decision?" she asked. Did he not consult the National Security Advisor, the Home Secretary, or anyone at Downing Street? Her questions echoed across the chamber. The explanation sounded implausible, and the discomfort among MPs was clear. She continued her line of reasoning like a prosecutor closing a case. The charges, she explained, were filed in April 2024 with the Crown Prosecution Service confirming the evidence was solid and the decision correct. But soon after the new government took office, the entire case collapsed. The CPS later stated that it had been satisfied with the decision to prosecute based on the law at the time. So Badenoch asked again, what changed between the initial charges and the case's collapse? The Prime Minister tried to reassure the House by promising transparency. He said he would release the witness statements and relevant documents to show exactly what evidence had been provided in 2023 and what had changed later. However, he added that this could not be done immediately because proper channels had to be followed, and the individuals involved needed to be informed first. Badenoch was not convinced. She urged him to release the documents immediately, the witness statements, the meeting minutes, and all communication with the Crown Prosecution Service. If there's nothing to hide, she said, then show us everything. Her demand struck a chord, and the delay in response only fueled suspicion. In an attempt to regain control, the Prime Minister made a critical mistake. He tried to discredit Badenoch personally, suggesting that she was neither a lawyer nor a leader. The chamber erupted. Personal attacks in Parliament are rare and often signal desperation. The reaction from MPs made it clear that the tactic had backfired. Badenoch remained composed and refused to be drawn into argument. Instead, she escalated. She reminded the House that the Prime Minister had recently expressed confidence in a figure closely associated with a convicted pedophile, a remark that left the room stunned. "Forgive us," she said, "if we don't trust your judgment. The damage was done." The Prime Minister's credibility took a visible hit. Badenoch pressed on, accusing the government of attempting to shift blame onto everyone but itself, civil servants, the media, and the previous administration, while failing to explain why crucial evidence had not reached prosecutors. Then came her final defining statement. A serious case involving national security had collapsed because the government was too weak to stand up to China. The chamber erupted once more. The Prime Minister tried to respond, but his words were drowned out by MPs shouting across the floor. The debate was effectively over. Her closing line was delivered calmly but powerfully. If the Prime Minister cannot protect the members of this House, what does that say about his ability to protect this country? The silence that followed was profound. The kind of silence that comes after an unanswerable question. The Prime Minister sat motionless, his team scrambling to recover, but the moment had already gone viral. Within hours, clips of the exchange were circulating across every news outlet and social media platform. Kemi Badenoch had effectively cornered the government on one of the most sensitive national security issues in years. To summarize, 2 individuals were charged with spying for China against British MPs. The case appeared strong, backed by MI5 and the CPS. Yet, after the current government came to power, the prosecution fell apart without a clear reason. The Prime Minister claimed the evidence had been submitted under a previous administration, but official records show that both governments had long recognized China as a strategic threat. Badenoch exposed inconsistencies, demanded the release of key documents, and highlighted the government's reluctance to act decisively. The more the Prime Minister deflected, the more his authority eroded. By the end of the session, one truth was evident. Kemi Badenoch had transformed a policy debate into a full-scale accountability moment. Her calm questioning, precise use of evidence, and refusal to be distracted revealed weaknesses in the government's national security handling. The Prime Minister, on the other hand, appeared evasive and unprepared, a perception that may linger for months to come. Whether or not this episode ultimately uncovers a real cover-up remains to be seen. But what cannot be denied is that Badenoch's performance has reshaped the political narrative surrounding Britain's stance toward China. In modern British politics, moments like this are rare. They cut through rehearsed talking points and expose what lies beneath. For the government, this was a day of reckoning, one that raised uncomfortable questions about integrity, transparency, and strength in dealing with foreign powers. And for Kemi Badenoch, it was a defining moment, proof that calm precision can be more devastating than any shout across the chamber.